At my stepdaughter's wedding planning, she said, "My real dad is walking me down the aisle. You can just watch from the audience." After I raised her from 10 and paid 50K for the wedding bills, I said, "I'll bring popcorn." 3 weeks later, the wedding venue called asking about the missing $40,000 deposit. Her real dad's check had bounced. I learned something about silence that spring, the kind that fills a room like smoke, thick and suffocating, the kind that makes people shift in their seats and suddenly find their wine glasses fascinating. The silence I'm talking about happened on a Tuesday evening in April, in the sunroom of a house I've been paying the mortgage on for 12 years, surrounded by wedding magazines that cost more than my first car. And it happened right after my stepdaughter looked me in the eye and said, "My real dad is walking me down the aisle. You can just watch from the audience." Just watch from the audience. Like I was a neighbor who'd been politely invited. Like I was her mother's book club friend. Like I hadn't been the one who taught her to ride a bike, who stayed up with her through stomach flus and geometry homework, who paid for SAT prep and college applications and that semester abroad in Barcelona she just had to do or her life would be over. I remember the exact texture of that moment. The way the late afternoon sun came through the windows at an angle that made everything look golden and unreal. Like we were all actors in a commercial for something expensive and unattainable. The way my wife, Jennifer, froze with her hand halfway to the sample book of invitation fonts, her mouth opening and closing like she was trying to remember her lines. The way the wedding planner, a woman named Sienna who wore exclusively cream colored linen and spoke in hushed tones usually reserved for funeral homes, carefully arranged her face into professional neutrality. And the way Madison, 24 years old, her mother's eyes, her father's jaw, my kid in every way that had mattered for 14 years, looked at me without apology, without hesitation, like she was simply stating a fact as obvious as the weather. My real dad. I want you to understand something before we go any further. This isn't a story about revenge, not really. It's a story about receipts. It's a story about the moment you realize that love, the kind you give freely and without condition, can be itemized, quantified, and dismissed in a single sentence. It's a story about what happens when silence becomes the most powerful thing you can offer. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. My name is David Mitchell, and I met Jennifer at a community fundraiser in 2011. She was volunteering at the school carnival, running the ring toss booth with the kind of determined cheerfulness that only single mothers can muster. After working a full shift and coming straight to an elementary school gym that smells like industrial cleaner and popcorn, her daughter Madison was 10 years old and hiding behind her mother's legs, watching the chaos of children and parents with the wary expression of someone who'd learned too early that the world wasn't always safe. Jennifer's ex-husband, Madison's real dad, though I'm using that term with all the sarcasm I can muster through this keyboard, had left when Madison was 6. Not left in the dramatic way, with suitcases and door slamming, just stopped showing up. Missed a pickup here, forgot a birthday there, until the gaps between his appearances grew so wide that his presence became the exception rather than the rule. His name was Garrett Holloway, and I need you to remember that name because it becomes important later. Not because he becomes important. He's always been a footnote, a ghost, a man-shaped absence. But because his name appears on documents, on checks, on promises. But in 2011, Garrett was just the reason Jennifer had shadows under her eyes and Madison had trust issues. I was just a guy who'd been divorced for 3 years, no kids of my own, working as a financial consultant and living in a condo that echoed too much when I came home at night. I volunteered at the carnival because my sister had guilted me into it, said I was becoming a hermit and needed to rejoin the human race. I ended up running the ring toss booth next to Jennifer's station. We talked between rounds of kids throwing rings at bottles. She made me laugh. She was smart and tired and honest in a way that felt like water after years of drought. When Madison finally emerged from behind her mother's legs to shyly ask if she could try the ring toss, I let her go until she won the giant stuffed penguin, which technically violated several carnival fairness protocols, but resulted in the first real smile I'd seen from either of them. We got coffee the next week, then dinner. Then suddenly it was 6 months later, and I was meeting Madison for real. Not as the ring toss guy, but as the man dating her mother. And she looked at me with those careful eyes and asked me directly, "Are you going to leave too?" She was 10 years old. I knelt down to her level, something I'd learned from some parenting book Jennifer had nervously given me to read, and I said, I'm not going anywhere, I promise. And I meant it. God help me, I meant it. We got married in 2012, a small ceremony in Jennifer's sister's backyard. Madison was the flower girl. She wore a purple dress she'd picked out herself and took her job with the kind of serious determination that made all the adults swallow lumps in their throats. Garrett didn't show up. He'd been invited, mostly because Jennifer believed in doing the right thing, but he sent a card with no return address and no check inside, just a scrawled, congrats. That could have been for anything. Madison didn't mention him. She called me David then, which was fine. I wasn't trying to replace her father, I was just trying to be present. We bought the house with the sunroom that year, a 4-bedroom colonial in a good school district with a backyard big enough for a swing set I assembled while Madison helped by handing me the wrong screws and asking me approximately 700 questions about why bolts were different from nails. Jennifer got a promotion at her marketing firm. I made partner at my consultancy. We were building something, a life, a family, the kind of boring suburban dream that feels revolutionary when you've been lonely. Madison started calling me David Dad around 7th grade, which morphed into just Dad by high school, casual and unthinking, the way kids do when someone's just there. Making breakfast, showing up to parent-teacher conferences, teaching her to drive in the parking lot of the abandoned grocery store, both of us sweating and swearing, but laughing by the end. Helping her pick a college, co-signing her first apartment lease, being her father in every way that counted. Garrett would materialize occasionally like a ghost with impeccable timing for major holidays and Madison's birthday, always with elaborate excuses about work or travel or circumstances beyond his control. He sold medical devices or software or something that required a lot of networking and allowed him to live in a series of apartments in cities that were always too far away for regular visits, but close enough that his absence felt intentional. Madison would get excited when he called. She'd spend hours picking out an outfit for their lunch dates or dinners, only to have him cancel at the last minute more often than not. And when he did show up, he was charming. He brought gifts. He told stories. He made promises about next time, about that trip they'd take, about being more present. And then he'd disappear again. Jennifer and I would pick up the pieces. We'd watch Madison pretend she wasn't disappointed. We'd take her for ice cream or to a movie or just sit with her while she processed the fact that her father was a hologram, present enough to hurt, absent enough to never be reliable. I never badmouthed him to her. Neither did Jennifer. We believed, naively, it turns out, that Madison would eventually see the pattern, that she'd recognize who'd been there and who hadn't, that love would be measured in accumulated moments, not dramatic gestures. We were wrong. The wedding planning started last January, right after Madison's boyfriend, fiancé, I should say, proposed over New Year's. His name is Colin, and he's fine. He's a project manager at a tech company, earnest and a little boring in the way that young professionals often are. All craft beer opinions and weekend hiking photos. He treats Madison well. He makes her happy. That's enough for me. They announced the engagement at Sunday brunch, Madison's hand thrust across the table so Jennifer and I could admire the ring, which was tasteful and expensive and somehow exactly what Madison would have chosen. We celebrated with mimosas and made toasts about love and future and all the things you're supposed to say when your daughter gets engaged. Your daughter. She'd been mine in every way that mattered for 14 years at that point. I'd paid for her college, state school, but still, tuition and room and board for 4 years. I'd covered her car insurance. I'd helped with her first apartment's security deposit when she moved to the city for her job in event planning. I'd been there. When they started talking about the wedding, about dates and venues and guest counts, I told Madison the same thing Jennifer and I had discussed. We'll help. Whatever you need. What they needed, apparently, was everything. The venue they wanted was a historic estate in the countryside, all manicured gardens and a ballroom with crystal chandeliers, the kind of place that appears in magazines with names like Timeless Elegance and makes other venues feel like cafeterias. It cost $15,000 just for the space rental. The caterer Madison had her heart set on was a James Beard-nominated chef who did farm-to-table fine dining and required a minimum of $200 per plate. The florist was an artist who worked only with seasonal and sustainable blooms and whose arrangements started at $8,000. The photographer was award-winning with a waiting list and a price tag of $10,000 for the day. Add in the dress, a custom designer gown that Madison tried on and cried over and absolutely had to have. The invitations, the cake, the band, the hair and makeup, the rehearsal dinner, and suddenly we were looking at a wedding that would cost more than my first house. $50,000. $50,000 for one day. I want to be clear, I'm not poor. The consultancy has been good to me. Jennifer makes solid money. We've saved, we've invested. We can afford to help with a wedding without ending up on food stamps. But 50 grand is still 50 grand. It's a new car. It's a down payment on a house. It's a year of retirement contributions. It's a lot. But Madison was excited in a way I hadn't seen since she was a kid picking out that stuffed penguin. And Jennifer was caught up in it too. The way mothers get with weddings, seeing it as this culmination of raising a daughter, this proof that despite everything, despite Garrett, despite the struggles, despite all of it, Madison was happy and loved and starting her own family. So I said yes. I met with the venue coordinator and put down the deposit. $10,000 as non-refundable. I paid the caterer's advance. I wrote checks for the florist, the photographer, the band. I set up a separate account just for wedding expenses and watched the balance drain with each new absolutely essential item Madison discovered. Jennifer and I joked about how we'd be eating ramen for the next year, about how our retirement cruise would have to wait, about how at least we only had one kid, so we only had to do this once. We joked because it felt good to be able to do this for Madison, to give her the wedding she wanted, to be the parents who could make her day perfect. We joked because we didn't know. The meeting in the sunroom happened on April 15th, tax day, which feels fitting in retrospect. Sienna, the wedding planner, had come over with updated timelines and vendor confirmations. The wedding was set for June 21st, the summer solstice, which Madison thought was romantic and symbolic, giving us just over 2 months to finalize everything. We'd gathered in the sunroom because it had the best light and the big table where we could spread out all the papers and binders and sample books that apparently come with planning a wedding. Madison had been texting throughout the meeting, distracted in a way that made Jennifer keep giving her these subtle mom looks that communicated entire dissertations about respect and attention. Finally, Madison looked up from her phone and said, "I need to talk to you guys about something." The way she said it made the room change temperature. Sienna, sensing incoming family discussion, gathered her papers a little too efficiently and murmured something about checking with the florist. "What's up, honey?" Jennifer asked in that carefully neutral tone parents use when they're bracing for impact. Madison took a breath. She looked at her mother, then at me, and I remember thinking her expression was odd, no, not guilty exactly, but defensive, prepared. "So my dad wants to be more involved in the wedding." The "my dad" hit different than it used to. There was an emphasis on it, a specificity that created a distinction where there hadn't been one before. "Okay," Jennifer said slowly. What does that mean?" "He wants to walk me down the aisle." The silence started then. Just a small silence, barely noticeable, the way a crack in a window starts before the whole thing shatters and... "Madison?" Jennifer began. "I know he hasn't been around as much," Madison cut in, her words coming faster now, like she'd rehearsed this. "But he's my father, my biological father, and he really wants to be part of this day, and I think it's important for both of us. Like a new beginning. I want you to understand that I saw it coming. Maybe not the exact words, but the shape of it. Garrett had been calling more in the past few months, ever since the engagement. Suddenly interested. Suddenly available. Making plans that he actually kept. Taking Madison to dinner. Meeting Colin. Playing the role of proud father with the kind of enthusiasm that only emerges when there's an audience. But I'd paid for this wedding. Every cent of it. I'd been there for every decision, every tasting, every venue walkthrough. I'd nodded through discussions about chair covers and uplighting and whether the cocktail hour should have a raw bar or a charcuterie station. And I'd assumed, stupidly, naively, that I'd be the one walking her down the aisle. "David's been planning to walk you down the aisle," Jennifer said, her voice careful. "We've talked about it. I know," Madison said, and she looked at me then, really looked at me. "And I appreciate everything you've done, everything you've always done. But David, you have to understand, Garrett is my real dad. This is traditional. This is how it's supposed to be. My real dad. Those 3 words. I could see Jennifer's face crumbling. See her trying to figure out how to navigate this without destroying her daughter or her marriage or her own heart. I could see Sienna in the doorway, frozen like a deer who'd wandered into a domestic dispute and was trying to calculate the safest exit route. And I could see Madison, 24 years old and beautiful and so certain she was right, looking at me with something like pity. You can still come to the wedding, she said, and I swear she meant it kindly. You can just watch from the audience. It doesn't mean I don't love you, it's just Garrett should have this moment. He's my father. The silence was complete now. The kind that has weight and texture, the kind that makes you aware of your own breathing, your own heartbeat, the way blood moves through your body. I could have said a lot of things in that moment. I could have pointed out that I'd been her father for 14 years while Garrett had been an occasional voice on the phone. I could have detailed every dance recital, every emergency room visit, um, every college tour, every moment I'd shown up while he'd been off, living his consequence-free life. I could have asked her to list what Garrett had contributed to this wedding, to her education, to her entire existence, beyond DNA and disappointment. I could have made her feel guilty. I could have made her choose. I could have detonated this entire carefully constructed life with the shrapnel of my hurt feelings and justified anger. Instead, I said, I'll bring popcorn. The thing about delivering a line like that, casual, almost amused, with just enough edge to make it clearer you're not joking, but not so much edge that it becomes a weapon, is that people don't know how to respond. Madison blinked. What? If I'm just watching from the audience, I said, keeping my tone light conversational, I might as well bring popcorn. Make it a real show. Jennifer stared at me. Sienna, still frozen in the doorway, looked like she was witnessing a murder in slow motion. David, that's not... Madison started. No, I get it. I stood up, gathering my jacket from the back of the chair with the kind of deliberate calm that comes from years of learning how to not react. Garrett's your real dad. He should walk you down the aisle. It's traditional. I'm just the guy who's been here. The bank, the audience member. You're being unfair, Madison said, her voice rising. Am I? I looked at her then, really looked at her, and let her see something I usually kept locked down. Not anger. Anger's hot and reactive. This was colder, more final. I've paid for this wedding, Madison. Every cent of it. $50,000 so far. The venue, the caterer, the flowers, your dress, all of it. I've been to every meeting, every tasting, every planning session. I've signed the contracts and written the checks. But sure, Garrett, who's contributed exactly nothing, who's been absent for most of your life, who shows up when it's convenient and disappears when it's not. He should walk you down the aisle? That makes perfect sense. It's not about money, Madison shot back. You're right, I said. It's not. But it's also not about money. It's about showing up. It's about being present. It's about earning the moments that matter. And I've earned this one. But you're giving it to someone who hasn't. He's my father. So am I. The silence that followed that was different, sharper, more dangerous. Jennifer was crying quietly, her hand pressed to her mouth. Madison was standing now too, her face flushed, caught between the daughter who loved me and the daughter who'd been waiting her whole life for her real dad to act like one. I think, I said quietly, I'm going to go for a drive. I walked out of the sunroom, through the kitchen, out the front door that I'd repainted last summer, to the driveway where my car sat next to Jennifer's SUV and Madison's sedan, the one I'd helped her buy, co-signed the loan for, taught her to change the oil on. I drove for 3 hours. Just drove, windows down, no music, no destination. Watching the suburbs give way to farmland. Watching the sun set over fields that didn't care about weddings or fathers or the specific way a heart breaks when someone measures your worth and finds you lacking. Somewhere around hour 2, on an empty stretch of county road, I pulled over and sat in the silence and let myself feel it all. The hurt, the anger, the betrayal, the specific humiliation of being replaced by someone who'd barely participated in the role, and then I let it go. Not because I forgave it, not because it didn't matter, but because I realized something sitting there in the gathering dark. Madison had made a choice. She'd chosen the idea of a father over the reality of one. She'd chosen biology over presence. She'd chosen Garrett's potential over my history. And that choice had consequences. I started the car and drove home. Jennifer was waiting when I got back, curled up on the couch in the living room with a glass of wine and red-rimmed eyes. Madison's car was gone from the driveway. She left about an hour ago, Jennifer said as I walked in. She's upset. She thinks you're being petty. I sat down next to her, took the wine glass from her hand, took a sip, handed it back. Maybe I am. David, she can have Garrett walk her down the aisle, I said. It's her wedding. Her choice. You don't mean that. I do. And I did. But I'm done paying for it. Jennifer went very still. What do you mean? I mean I've contributed $50,000 to this wedding. I've paid my share. If Garrett wants the honor of walking Madison down the aisle, he can have the honor of paying for it too. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. I looked at my wife, the woman I'd loved for 13 years, and I saw the war happening behind her eyes. Mother versus wife. Daughter's dream versus husband's pain. Jennifer, I'm not trying to punish anyone, but I'm also not going to keep funding a wedding where I've been demoted to spectator. Madison wants Garrett to be her father for this day. Fine, he can be her father all the way. He can cover the costs, he can deal with the vendors, he can write the checks. He can't afford this wedding. Then Madison can scale back. Have something smaller, something Garrett can actually manage. Or she can keep the wedding she wants and figure out another way to pay for it. But I'm out. She's my daughter, Jennifer whispered. I know. And I'm not asking you to choose. I'm not asking you to do anything. This is between me and Madison. You can keep contributing if you want. You can help her however you want, but I'm done. Jennifer was crying again, silently, tears running down her face in the lamplight. This is going to destroy our family. Madison destroyed it the moment she looked me in the eye and called Garrett her real dad, like I was a placeholder. Like 14 years meant nothing. I didn't do this. I'm just refusing to keep pretending it didn't happen. We sat there in silence, the kind that had become the theme of the day. After a while, Jennifer leaned against me and I put my arm around her, and we stayed like that until we were both too tired to do anything but go to bed. We didn't solve anything that night. We just survived it. The next morning, I made coffee and checked my email and found 3 messages from Madison. I can't believe you're being like this. You're ruining my wedding. I thought you were better than this. I deleted them without responding. Jennifer came downstairs around 8, looking like she'd slept about as well as I had, which is to say not at all. We moved around the kitchen in careful synchronicity, the dance of people who've been together long enough to avoid physical collision, but we're currently emotionally crashing into each other with every breath. I need to call her, Jennifer said finally. Okay, I need to try to fix this. Okay, David, please, talk to me. I looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who'd been dragged into the middle of something that shouldn't have been her problem. What do you want me to say? That I'm fine? I'm not. That I understand? I don't. Madison made a choice. I'm making mine. That's all this is. It's her wedding day. It should be perfect. Then she should have thought about that before uninviting me from the most important moment. You're not uninvited. I'm relegated to the audience, Jennifer. Might as well be the same thing. She didn't have an answer for that. I went to work, spent the day in meetings, reviewing portfolios, pretending to care about market fluctuations and asset allocations while internally cataloging every moment of Madison's life I'd been present for. Her first period, when Jennifer was traveling for work and I had to make an emergency run to CVS for supplies while Madison cried in the bathroom, mortified and terrified. Her high school graduation, where she gave a speech and thanked her parents and looked right at me when she said it. Her 21st birthday, when she got too drunk at the restaurant and I drove her home and held her hair while she threw up and she kept saying, "Love you, Dad," between heaves. Every moment, every single one. And none of it had been enough. 2 weeks went by. Jennifer tried to mediate, tried to get Madison and me in the same room to talk it out. Like this was a misunderstanding that could be resolved with communication. But it wasn't a misunderstanding. Madison knew exactly what she'd said and what it meant. She just hadn't expected me to have boundaries about it. The checks I'd written for various vendors were clearing. The wedding was chugging along on momentum and my money. Madison had gone silent toward me. No calls, no texts, just updates to Jennifer about dress fittings and invitation designs that I heard about secondhand. Garrett, apparently, was so excited to be walking Madison down the aisle. He'd been calling her regularly, taking her to dinner, acting like the father he'd never bothered to be when it required actual work. And Madison was eating it up, convinced that this was the healing and new beginning she'd wanted. I didn't say anything. I watched it play out the way you watch a car accident in slow motion, knowing exactly how it's going to end but powerless to stop it. Colin, Madison's fiance, called me once during those 2 weeks. Awkward, and apologetic, trying to play diplomat. Hey, David, I just wanted to say, I think Madison's making a mistake. You've been incredible to her, to us. I don't really get why she's doing this. Did you tell her that? I asked. I tried. She says it's complicated, that you wouldn't understand. I understand perfectly, but I appreciate you calling. We left it at that. He was in an impossible position. Disagree with his fiancée and risk his own wedding, or stay quiet and watch her burn a bridge she didn't realize she'd need later. He chose silence, which I couldn't blame him for. 3 weeks after the sunroom incident, on a Tuesday morning, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Local area code, so I answered. Mr. Mitchell, this is Caroline from Meadowbrook Estate. Meadowbrook Estate, the wedding venue. Hi, Caroline, I said, already knowing this wasn't a courtesy call. I'm calling about the balance on the Holloway Chen wedding. We have the event scheduled for June 21st, and we're showing an outstanding balance of $40,000 that was due last week. We've sent several reminders to the email on file, but we haven't received payment. I pulled up my records. I'd paid the initial $10,000 deposit back in January, the remaining $40,000 for the venue, which included the ceremony space, the ballroom, the catering, the bar service, basically everything, had been scheduled for payment in April, which I'd planned to handle, before Madison had demoted me to audience member. Caroline, I said carefully, I need you to clarify something. What email address do you have on file for payment contacts? I heard typing. I'm showing Garrett Holloway and Madison Chen. Interesting. When did that change? I asked. More typing. Looks like April 18th. We received an email from Ms. Chen requesting that all financial correspondence go to her and Mr. Holloway instead of you and Mrs. Mitchell, 3 days after the sunroom incident. I see, I said, son. And what happens if the balance isn't paid? Caroline's voice took on that professionally sympathetic tone that people use when delivering bad news they've delivered many times before. We require full payment at least 30 days before the event. If payment isn't received by May 21st, we'll have to cancel the booking and forfeit the deposit. Thanks for letting me know, I said. Do you want to process the payment now? I can take it over the phone. No, I said. I'm not the responsible party anymore. You'll need to contact Garrett Holloway and Madison Chen. They're handling the finances. There was a pause. Mr. Mitchell, I don't want to overstep, but I've been doing this for 15 years, and I can hear when there's a situation. If this is a family matter, it is. I said, Mom. But it's not one I'm resolving by paying for their venue. Contact Garrett and Madison. They'll take care of it. I hung up and sat there in my office, looking out the window at the city spreading out below, and felt something that might have been satisfaction or might have been the first stage of grief. I didn't call Jennifer. I didn't call Madison. I just waited. The call from Jennifer came that night while I was making dinner. Grilled chicken and vegetables, and the kind of meal you make when you're trying to pretend everything is normal. David, what did you do? No hello, no preamble, just accusation. I made chicken, I said, flipping a breast in the pan. You want some? The venue called Madison. They're saying the payment hasn't been made. They're going to cancel the wedding. That's what happens when you don't pay for things. David, Jennifer. I turned down the heat, set down the spatula, gave her my full attention through the phone. Madison changed the billing contact on the venue account 3 days after she told me I wasn't walking her down the aisle. She put herself and Garrett as the responsible parties, so they're responsible. The venue called me this morning looking for payment, and I told them to contact the people on the account. Silence on the other end. Then, you did this on purpose. I did exactly what Madison set up. She wanted Garrett to be her father. He gets to be her father all the way, including the part where he pays for things. He can't afford a $40,000 venue. Then maybe she should have thought about that before replacing me. This is her wedding day. I'm aware. I've been very aware. I've been present for every single planning moment until she told me I'd be watching from the audience. So now I am. I'm just watching, like she suggested. Jennifer was crying. I could hear it in her breathing, in the catch in her voice. You're being cruel. No, I said, and I meant it. I'm being honest. Madison wanted her real dad to walk her down the aisle. Fine, but her real dad comes with real dad responsibilities, including financial ones. She doesn't get to have Garrett for the glory moments and me for the checkbook. What do you want me to do? Nothing. This is between Madison and me. She's my daughter. I know. And I love you, but I'm not backing down on this. I heard her sob once, hard and sharp, and then the line went dead. I finished making dinner. I ate alone. The next few days were tense. Jennifer moved through the house like a ghost, trying to be present for both her daughter and her husband, while being fully available to neither. She'd take calls from Madison in the other room, conversations I could hear the shape of even if I couldn't make out the words. Desperate and pleading and trying to solve an equation that didn't have a good solution. Madison didn't call me. Garrett didn't call anyone, as far as I could tell. And the wedding date was getting closer. June 21st was now less than 6 weeks away, and without a venue, there was no wedding. On May 15th, exactly 1 week before Meadowbrook Estates' payment deadline, my phone rang again. Caroline from the venue. Mr. Mitchell, I'm calling to inform you that we received a check from Garrett Holloway for $40,000 to cover the remaining balance. Something cold settled in my chest. Okay. However, I wanted to verify with you before we process it. Given the previous situation and the fact that you were the original booking contact, I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of the change in payment responsibility. Did the check clear? We haven't deposited it yet. We wanted confirmation first. It's not my venue booking anymore, I said. Madison and Garrett are handling it. If they sent a check, that's between you and them. Understood. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. She hung up. I sat there, that cold feeling spreading. Because here's the thing about being a financial consultant. You develop instincts about money, about how people handle it, about when something feels off. Garrett Holloway, medical device salesman with a history of canceling on his daughter because of work and circumstances, had just written a check for $40,000. I picked up the phone and called my guy at the bank, Rick, who I'd known for 20 years, who owed me favors from when I'd helped him unfuck his retirement portfolio. Rick, I need you to do something for me. It's personal, and it might be unethical, and I'll never ask you for anything again. Jesus, David, what? I need you to tell me if a check is going to clear. Not my check, someone else's. But it impacts my family. I gave him the details, Garrett's name, the amount, the probable bank based on where he lived. Rick was quiet for a long moment. I can't officially do this. I know. You're asking me to check someone's account status. I'm asking you to prevent my stepdaughter's wedding from imploding. Another pause. Give me an hour. Rick called me back 45 minutes later. The account has $3,200 in it. I closed my eyes. You're sure? I'm sure. There's no way a $40,000 check from that account is clearing. It'll bounce harder than a basketball on concrete. When will the venue find out? Depends when they deposit it. If they try to do a quick deposit, maybe tomorrow. If they sit on it, could be a week. Thanks, Rick. David, whatever this is about, I hope it works out. I hung up and sat in my office with the knowledge of what was coming, feeling like I was watching a tsunami form on the horizon and knowing there was nothing I could do but watch it hit. Garrett had written a bad check. Garrett, who Madison had chosen to be her real dad for this wedding, who she'd put in charge of the finances, who she'd trusted to step up and be present, had written a check he couldn't cover. Because of course he had. Because that's what Garrett did. He made promises he couldn't keep. He showed up when it was easy and disappeared when it was hard. He was all flash and no substance, all talk and no follow-through. And Madison was about to learn that in the most painful way possible. I could have called Jennifer. Could have warned her. Could have stepped in and fixed it like I'd fixed everything else in Madison's life. But I didn't. Instead, I waited. The call from Madison came on May 18th, a Friday evening. I was in the backyard attempting to fix a section of fence that had been sagging since winter, when my phone rang with her name. I considered not answering, but curiosity won. David? Her voice was small, scared, the voice of the 10-year-old who used to hide behind Jennifer's legs. Can you talk? I'm here. The venue called. They said Dad's check bounced. They said the account didn't have enough money and now they're canceling the wedding and keeping the deposit and I don't know what to do. I hammered in a nail, the sound sharp in the early evening air. Have you talked to Garrett? I've been calling him all day. He's not answering. His voicemail is full. David, the wedding is in 5 weeks. We don't have a venue. We don't have anywhere to go. All the other places are booked. Everything's falling apart. I'm sorry that's happening. Can you? She took a shaky breath. Can you fix it? Can you pay them and fix it? Please, I know I messed up. I know that I said things I shouldn't have, but this is my wedding. Please. I set down the hammer and looked at the fence, at this house I'd bought, at this backyard where I'd taught Madison to play catch, and later to parallel park, and even later to face hard truths about boys who didn't deserve her. No, I said quietly. What? I'm not fixing it. David, you made a choice, Madison. You told me I was just watching from the audience. You put Garrett in charge of the finances because he's your real dad. This is what happens when your real dad is Garrett. He lets you down. He writes bad checks. He doesn't answer when you need him. This is who he's always been, Madison. You just didn't want to see it. Please. She was crying now, full sobs that tore at something in my chest. Please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You were right. About everything, he's not answering. He's gone again. It's always like this. Please help me. I will help you, he said. I'll help you learn that actions have consequences, that the people who love you aren't interchangeable, that showing up matters, that 14 years of being a father counts for something, and I'll help you by letting you figure this out on your own. I can't lose my venue. I can't cancel my wedding. Then figure it out. Call Garrett until he answers. Get the money from him. Or scale back the wedding to something you can afford or postpone it. But don't call me looking for a bailout when you've spent the last month treating me like hired help. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, I said gently. You did, and that's okay. You're allowed to feel how you feel, but I'm allowed to not finance it. Mom's going to be so upset. Your mom has been upset for weeks, Madison, because you hurt both of us. But she's your mother. She can't help but wanted to fix things for you. I'm your dad, which means I can love you and still let you experience the consequences of your choices. There was a long silence on the other end. Then, very quietly, you're still my dad? And that broke me a little. I've always been your dad, I said. From the moment I promised a 10-year-old girl I wouldn't leave. I've been here. I'm still here. But being here doesn't mean being your personal 18. It means loving you enough to let you learn hard lessons. She was really crying now, the kind of crying that comes from realizing you've made a mistake you can't take back. I don't know what to do. You'll figure it out. You're smart. You're capable. You've got Colin. You've got your mom. You'll figure it out. Will you come to the wedding if I fix this? If you fix this, I said, and if you figure out who you want walking you down the aisle, we can talk. But Madison, I'm not watching from the audience. Not anymore. Either I'm your dad for the moment that matters, or I'm not there at all. I hung up before she could respond. Jennifer was standing in the doorway to the house, watching me. She'd heard everything. You're a hard man sometimes, she said. I know. She walked across the backyard and put her arms around me. And we stood there while the sun set and the neighbor's dog barked, and somewhere in the city, our daughter tried to figure out how to unbreak something that maybe couldn't be unbroken. What happened next came to me in pieces, filtered through Jennifer's phone calls with Madison, through updates she shared. In the quiet moments before we fell asleep, Madison spent 3 days trying to reach Garrett. He finally answered on day 4 with an excuse about being out of town for work and not realizing his account didn't have enough to cover the check. He promised to fix it. He said he'd take care of everything. He asked for a week to move some money around. Madison, desperate and wanting to believe, gave him the week. The week passed. Garrett stopped answering again. The venue, finally done with the drama, officially canceled the booking and kept the $10,000 deposit. They had other couples lined up, other weddings to book. Madison Chen and Colin Mercer's wedding was no longer their problem. Madison, faced with the reality that her real dad had failed her in the most spectacular way possible, did what people do when they hit bottom. She asked for help from people who'd actually been there. She called Jennifer first, sobbing so hard she could barely speak. Jennifer, being Jennifer, went into crisis management mode. She started making calls, looking for available venues, trying to find something, anything that could accommodate a wedding in less than a month. Everything was booked. The places that weren't booked were either way out of budget or were facilities that made church basements look luxurious. Reception halls with flickering fluorescent lights and walls the color of institutional depression. Hotels with conference rooms that still had motivational posters about synergy on the walls. Madison's perfect wedding, the one she'd spent months planning, the one she'd been so excited about, the one I'd funded, was gone. On May 25th, one day before the wedding was supposed to happen, Jennifer came home and found me in my office going over client portfolios. "She wants to talk to you," Jennifer said. "Okay. David, she's destroyed. Garrett completely disappeared. Won't answer calls, texts, emails, nothing. He wrote a bad check and vanished. Colin's parents offered to help with money, but there's nowhere available. She's thinking about canceling the whole thing." I closed my laptop. "Is that what she wants?" "No, she wants her wedding. She wants to marry Colin, but she doesn't know how to make it happen." "So what does she want from me?" Jennifer sat down across from me, her eyes tired. "She wants to apologize. Really apologize. And she wants to know if you can help. Help how? That's what she wants to talk to you about." I thought about it. About Madison at 10, asking if I was going to leave. About Madison at 16, angry at the world and taking it out on everyone in range until we finally broke through to the herd underneath. About Madison at 22, graduating college and giving her speech and looking right at me. About Madison now, 24 and engaged and learning that the father she'd idealized was exactly who I'd been protecting her from all along. "Okay," I said, "I'll talk to her." Madison came over that evening. She looked like she'd aged 5 years in 5 weeks, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, no makeup, wearing sweatpants and one of Colin's hoodies. Nothing like the excited bride-to-be who'd been making decisions about uplighting and chair covers. We sat in the living room. Me in my chair, Madison on the couch, Jennifer hovering in the doorway before I gave her a look that said, this needed to be just us. Madison twisted her hands in her lap, not meeting my eyes. "Thank you for seeing me." "Of course. I need to say something first." She took a breath. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what I said, for how I treated you, for thinking that biology mattered more than showing up. You've been my dad for 14 years. You've been there for everything." And I threw that away because I wanted something that wasn't real. "Why did you want it?" I asked. "Really?" She finally looked at me, her eyes red-rimmed. "Because I've spent my whole life wondering what was wrong with me that made my father not want to be around. And when he started calling more, when he seemed interested, I thought maybe I'd finally get that relationship I'd been missing. I thought maybe the problem wasn't me. Maybe he'd just needed time. Maybe now that I was getting married, he'd finally be the dad I'd always wanted. And he's not." She laughed, but it came out broken. "He's never going to be. He wrote a check he couldn't cover and disappeared again. He ruined my wedding and won't even answer his phone to explain. Because that's what he does. That's what he's always done it. And you've been cleaning up his messes my whole life, and I didn't even notice." I let that sit for a moment. Then, "I've been doing it because I love you, not because I had to." "I know." She wiped her eyes. "David, I need help. The wedding's in 4 weeks. We have no venue. Most of our deposits are gone. Garrett's check destroyed the venue booking. Colin and I have some savings, and his parents want to help, but we don't have enough to rebook something like what we had. And I know I have no right to ask you for anything after what I did, but I don't know what else to do." Here it was, the moment, the choice. I could have said no, could have let her figure it out on her own, could have made her deal with the full consequences of choosing Garrett over me. But here's the thing about being a parent, a real parent, the kind who shows up. You don't love conditionally. You don't stop being present just because you're hurt. You teach the lesson, you let them feel the consequence, and then if they've learned, you help them up. "How much do you have?" I asked. She blinked. "What?" "You and Colin and his parents. How much money do you have available for the wedding?" Maybe 15,000? Colin's parents are offering 10, and we have about 5 saved." "Okay." I pulled out my phone, started making notes. That won't get you Meadowbrook Estate, but it might get you something good, something real, something that matters more than crystal chandeliers. David, I'm not giving you money, I said, cutting her off. I've already paid $50,000 for a wedding that didn't happen, but I'll help you plan a new one. I'll make calls. I'll negotiate with vendors. I'll use my connections. But this wedding is going to be different from what you originally wanted. I don't care. She was crying again. I just want to marry Colin. I just want people who love us to be there. I don't care about the fancy venue or the five-course meal or any of it. You say that now. I mean it. She leaned forward. David, I spent the last month watching everything fall apart because I chose appearances over reality. I chose the fantasy of who I wanted my father to be over the reality of who you are. I'm done with that. I just want a wedding. I want to marry Colin, and I want you there. In what capacity? She knew what I was asking. Will you walk me down the aisle? Please? You're my dad, my real dad, the one who's been there, the one who matters. Will you? I looked at this girl, this woman who I'd raised from 10 years old, who I'd loved through everything, who'd hurt me more deeply in the last month than I thought possible, and who was now sitting in front of me with the full knowledge of what she'd done. Yes, I said, I'll walk you down the aisle. She sobbed once, hard, and then she was across the room and hugging me, and I held my daughter while she cried and told me she was sorry and promised she'd never take me for granted again. Jennifer came in then, crying too, and we all sat there in our living room while the light faded outside and somewhere in the universe, Garrett Holloway continued to not answer his phone. But we didn't need him. We'd never needed him. The next 4 weeks were a blur of planning on a budget and with a deadline that would make most wedding planners quit the industry. I called in every favor I had, every vendor I'd ever worked with through client events, every connection Jennifer had through her marketing firm, every friend who knew someone who knew someone. We found a venue, not an estate, but a beautiful garden space at a local botanical garden that had a cancellation. It was smaller, more intimate, with a capacity of 80 instead of 200. The rental was $3,000. The caterer, that farm-to-table chef Madison had originally wanted, was booked, but I knew someone who knew someone. And we got a younger chef just starting out, who was willing to do a beautiful meal for $100 a plate instead of $200. Family-style service instead of plated courses. Simple, elegant, delicious. The flowers weren't from the high-end artist. We used a local florist Jennifer had worked with on corporate events who did gorgeous arrangements at a fraction of the cost. The photographer was a recent college graduate building their portfolio who charged $2,000 for the day and turned out to be extraordinarily talented. Madison's dress, that custom designer gown she'd had to have, was sold to a consignment boutique, and she found a sample sale dress that fit her perfectly for $800. We cut the guest list from 200 to 80, close friends and family only, people who mattered. The invitation redesign was handled by a graphic designer friend of Colin's who owed him a favor. We did it all in less than a month, and somehow it was better. The wedding we cobbled together out of necessity and budget constraints and favors and quick thinking was more real, more personal, more meaningful than the original production Madison had planned. Because this wedding wasn't about impressing people. It wasn't about having the fanciest venue or the most expensive caterer. It was about Madison and Colin starting their life together, surrounded by people who loved them. The day before the wedding, while Madison was at a spa day with Jennifer and her bridesmaids, a gift from Jennifer's sister, Colin came over to help me set up some last-minute decorations at the botanical garden. We worked in comfortable silence for a while, stringing lights and arranging chairs, before Colin said, "Thank you for helping us salvage this. Madison's told me everything. About Garrett, about what she said to you, all of it. I just want you to know that I think what you did, letting her face the consequences but still being there to help her up, that's what being a real father looks like." "I just love her," I said, "even when she makes it hard." "That's what I mean." He secured a light strand to a tree branch. "My dad's great, but he would have bailed her out immediately, paid for everything to avoid conflict. Madison wouldn't have learned anything. You loved her enough to let her struggle. That takes guts." "It took anger," I admitted, "and hurt feelings, and being stubborn. Maybe, but it worked. She sees you now. Really sees you. what you've done for her, who you are. That wouldn't have happened if you'd just kept enabling the fantasy. We finished the setup as the sun started to set, and the botanical garden looked magic. Strung with lights, chairs arranged in neat rows facing a natural altar formed by flowering trees. The whole space intimate and beautiful in a way the original estate could never have been. "This is going to be perfect," Colin said. And I believed him. June 21st, the summer solstice, the longest day of the year. Madison's wedding day. I woke up early the way I always do before important events, my brain too wired to sleep. Made coffee, sat in the backyard watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. Jennifer found me there around 7, sliding into the chair next to mine and taking my coffee cup for a sip before handing it back. "Big day," she said. "Big day. How are you feeling?" "Good," I said, and I meant it. Nervous, emotional, but good. "She wrote you a letter," Jennifer said. "Madison. She wanted me to give it to you this morning." She handed me an envelope, my name written on the front in Madison's handwriting. I opened it carefully. "David, I don't have enough words to thank you. Not just for the last 4 weeks, but for the last 14 years. For showing up, for being present, for being my dad when you didn't have to be. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I was so focused on what I didn't have that I couldn't appreciate what I did. You taught me how to ride a bike. You taught me to drive. You helped me with my college essays. You held my hair when I was sick and celebrated when I succeeded and picked me up every time I fell. You've been there for everything. That's what a father does. That's what you've done. I'm so proud to have you walk me down the aisle today. Not because of tradition, not because I have to have someone do it, but because you're the person who got me here. You're the person who believed in me. You're my dad. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave up on you. I love you, Madison." I folded the letter carefully, tucked it back in the envelope, and let Jennifer hold my hand while I processed all of it. The anger, the hurt, the reconciliation, the growth, all of it distilled into this moment, this morning, this day. "She's going to be okay," Jennifer said softly. "I know. We all are. I know." We sat there until the sun was fully up, until it was time to get ready, until the day officially started. The wedding was at 4 o'clock. Golden hour, Madison had said, when the light would be perfect for photos. I got dressed in my suit, the same one I'd planned to wear to the original wedding, back when I thought I'd just be watching from the audience. Jennifer had pressed it that morning, and it looked good. Made me feel official, ready. We arrived at the botanical garden at 3 to find organized chaos. The photographer snapping shots of details, the florist making last-minute adjustments, guests starting to arrive, and exclaim over how beautiful everything looked. Sienna, the wedding planner who'd witnessed the original disaster in our sunroom, found me as I was checking in with the catering team. She pulled me aside, her perpetually calm demeanor cracking just enough to show real emotion. "Mr. Mitchell," she said quietly, "I've been doing this for 20 years. I've seen a lot of weddings, a lot of family drama, a lot of disasters. I just want to say what you did for Madison, helping her create this after everything that happened, that's the most beautiful thing I've seen in this industry. This wedding might not be what she originally planned, but it's better. It's real. Thank you," I said. "That means a lot." "She's getting ready in the cottage. She asked if you'd come see her before the ceremony." The cottage was a small stone building at the edge of the garden, used for storage usually, but converted today into a bridal suite. I knocked on the door, heard Madison call, "Come in," and stepped into controlled chaos. Bridesmaids in mismatched lavender dresses, Jennifer helping with someone's hair, makeup scattered across every surface, champagne glasses, nervous laughter. And in the center of it all, Madison in her dress. It wasn't the custom designer gown she'd originally chosen. It was simpler, more classic. A fitted bodice with delicate lace sleeves, a flowing skirt that moved like water. Her hair was half up, half down, soft and romantic. She looked beautiful. She looked like herself. "Hi," she said, seeing me. "Can we have a minute?" The room cleared out, bridesmaids and Jennifer filing past me with knowing smiles. Madison twisted her hands, a nervous gesture I recognized from a lifetime of big moments. "You look incredible," I said. "I'm nervous." "You should be. You're getting married." She laughed, but it was shaky. David, I need to tell you something before we do this. Okay. I called Garrett this morning, one last time. My chest tightened. Did he answer? Yeah. She looked down at her hands. He did. He said congratulations. He said he was sorry about the check, about disappearing, about everything. He said he'd meant to be more involved, but things got complicated. Madison, I told him not to come to the wedding, she continued. I told him I'd realize something. That being a father isn't about biology or grand gestures or showing up for the good parts. It's about being there, consistently. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. And that I already had a father, that I'd always had one. I felt something in my chest crack open. What did he say? He said he understood, that he was happy for me, that he hoped I had a good life. She finally looked up at me, tears threatening her carefully applied makeup. And then he said goodbye, not see you soon or we'll talk later, just goodbye, like he was finally being honest about what he is and what he isn't. I'm sorry, Heinolson, I said, because even though Garrett had never been there, he was still her biological father. The loss still hurt. I'm not, Madison said. I'm not anymore. And because I realized I didn't lose anything, and you can't lose something you never had. But I almost lost you. I almost lost something real because I was chasing something fake. She crossed the room then, carefully with her dress, and took both my hands. You're my dad, not because you have to be, not because you married my mom, but because you chose to be every single day for 14 years. That's what matters. That's what's real. And I'm so grateful I get to walk down that aisle with you today. Not because of tradition, but because you're the person who got me here. You're the person who believed in me. You're my father in every way that counts. I pulled her into a hug, careful of the dress, and let myself feel all of it. The pride, the love, the forgiveness, the healing. I love you, Madison, I said. I've always loved you. From that first day at the carnival when you were 10 years old and asked if I was going to leave, I promised I wouldn't, and I meant it. I'm still here. I know, she whispered. I know. A knock on the door, Jennifer peeking in. It's time. Madison pulled back, wiped carefully at her eyes. How do I look? Perfect, I said. You look perfect. The ceremony was simple and beautiful. 80 people who loved Madison and Colin, seated in rows among the flowers, the string quartet playing as the wedding party processed down the aisle. And then it was our turn. I offered Madison my arm, and she took it, and we stood together at the back of the garden, waiting for our cue. The music changed. The traditional wedding march, played by the quartet with a slightly modern arrangement that felt both classic and fresh. Ready? I asked. Re, she said. We started walking. I want you to understand what that walk meant. Every step down that aisle was a year we'd spent together. Every face we passed was a person who'd been part of our journey. Every flower, every light, every carefully chosen detail was a reflection of what we'd built from the ashes of what had fallen apart. This walk wasn't about tradition or ceremony or checking a box. It was about presence, about showing up, about earning the moments that matter. Madison's hand was steady on my arm. She smiled at the guests. At Colin standing at the altar with tears already streaming down his face, at her mother in the front row crying behind her camera phone. When we reached the altar, the officiant, a friend of Colin's from college who'd gotten ordained for the occasion, said, "Who presents this woman to be married to this man?" I looked at Madison. She looked at me, and I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Her mother and I do, with all our love and pride." Jennifer sobbed from the front row. Madison hugged me tight, whispered, "Thank you, Dad," in my ear, and let me go. I kissed her forehead, shook Colin's hand, took my seat next to Jennifer in the front row. And I watched my daughter get married. The reception was joyful in a way that the original, overly planned wedding could never have been. The food was incredible. Family-style platters passed around tables, encouraging conversation and connection. The botanical garden at sunset was magic. All golden light and flowering trees and string lights starting to twinkle as the sky darkened. Madison and Colin's first dance was to a song I'd never heard before, something acoustic and sweet. Then the traditional father-daughter dance. Madison came and found me, led me to the dance floor while the DJ announced, "And now Madison and her father, David, will share a dance." Her father. Not stepdad, not mother's husband. Her father. We danced to The Way You Look Tonight. Classic, simple, perfect. Madison rested her head on my shoulder, and I held my daughter while we swayed, and she said, "Thank you for not giving up on me." "Never," I promised. "Not ever." When the song ended, instead of letting me go back to my seat, Madison took the microphone from the DJ. The room quieted, conversations trailing off as people turned to look. "Hi, everyone," Madison said, her voice amplified but nervous. "I'm supposed to do toasts later, but I need to say something now while I have the courage." Colin, dancing with his mother, stopped and watched. Jennifer, at our table, pressed her hand to her mouth. "Most of you know that planning this wedding was complicated," Madison continued, and there were some knowing laughs from people who'd been involved in the chaos. "We had a venue fall through, budgets change, all kinds of drama. But through all of it, one person never wavered. One person showed up, made calls, pulled favors, and helped us create this day when it seemed impossible." She looked at me. "David, my dad, has been in my life since I was 10 years old, and for most of that time, I took him for granted. I expected him to be there without appreciating what it meant that he was there. I made the mistake of thinking that biology mattered more than presence, that the title father meant more than the actions of being one." The room was silent now, everyone listening. "I'm not going to share all the details of what happened," Madison said, "but I will say that I learned a hard lesson about what it means to be a parent. It's not about DNA. It's not about who shows up for the good parts. It's about who shows up for everything. Who teaches you to ride a bike and helps with homework and stays up with you when you're sick and celebrates your successes and picks you up when you fail. It's about being there, consistently, loving someone, even when they make it hard." She was crying now, but she kept going. "David, you have been my father in every way that matters for 14 years. You raised me. You supported me. You loved me. And when I hurt you, when I made choices that must have been devastating, you loved me enough to let me learn from them. You didn't abandon me. You didn't give up. You just waited until I understood." Jennifer was sobbing. Half the room was crying. I was fighting to keep it together. "So I want everyone here to know," Madison said, her voice strong despite the tears, "that I'm not just grateful for this wedding. I am grateful for you, for every moment you've been there, for being my dad, my real dad, the one who matters. I love you." The room erupted in applause. Madison handed back the microphone and came to me, and I held her while people clapped and cheered and celebrated not just the wedding, but the relationship we'd rebuilt from the ashes of what had almost broken. "I love you too," I told her. "Always have, always will." The rest of the reception was a blur of joy. Dancing and laughter and toasts and cake. Friends and family celebrating Madison and Colin. Celebrating love. Celebrating second chances. Around 10 o'clock, as the party was winding down, I stepped away from the noise to get some air. Found a quiet spot at the edge of the garden, overlooking the darkened flower beds and the string lights still twinkling overhead. Jennifer found me there a few minutes later, sliding her arm around my waist. "Hell of a day, she said. "Hell of a day," I agreed. "I'm proud of you for all of it. For being angry and hurt, but not vindictive. For teaching Madison that lesson without destroying her. For being here now." "I'm proud of her," I said. "For learning it. For having the courage to face what she did and change. That's not easy. You raised her well. We raised her well." We stood there in the quiet, watching the last of the reception through the trees, watching Madison and Colin dance with their friends, young and in love, and starting their lives together. "Do you think Garrett will ever show up again?" Jennifer asked. "Maybe, probably. He's good at reappearing when it's easy." I thought about the phone call Madison had described, Garrett's final goodbye. But I don't think Madison will be waiting for him anymore. I think she finally understands the difference between a father and a dad. Biology and presence. Exactly. Jennifer leaned her head on my shoulder. "Thank you for not giving up on us, on me, on this family." "Never," I said. "This is my family. You're my family. I'm not going anywhere." And I meant it. God help me, I still meant it. Madison and Colin's first Christmas as a married couple was hosted at our house, continuing a tradition we'd started years ago. The house was full. Jennifer's sister and her family, Colin's parents, a handful of close friends, children running around causing chaos. Madison found me in the kitchen while I was making coffee, away from the chaos of gift opening in the living room. "Hey, Dad," she said. And I still got a kick out of hearing her say it with that particular emphasis. Can I talk to you for a second? Always. She was holding an envelope. Colin and I wanted to give you this separately, not in front of everyone. I took the envelope, opened it. Inside was a check for $25,000 and a card. The card read, David, this is half of what you spent on our original wedding planning. It's taken us 6 months to save it, and it'll take us another 6 to save the other half. But we wanted you to know we're paying you back. Not because we have to, but because we want to. Because you taught us that actions matter, that showing up matters, that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice you make every day. Thank you for choosing us, for choosing me, for being my dad. We love you, Madison and Colin. I looked at my daughter in every way that mattered, and saw the woman she'd become. Responsible, thoughtful, aware of what things cost, both financially and emotionally. You don't have to do this, I said. We know, we want to, it matters to us. I pulled her into a hug, this gift more valuable than any dollar amount because it meant she understood. She finally understood what I'd been trying to teach her, that love requires action, that being present requires showing up, that relationships are built on accumulated moments, not grand gestures. I'm proud of you, I told her. I learned from the best, she said. We went back to the living room, to the family, to the chaos of Christmas morning. Jennifer looked up as we entered, saw something in our faces, smiled. This was my family. Not because of biology, not because of legal documents or shared DNA, but because of choice, because of presence, because of showing up day after day, year after year, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. And as I watched Madison laugh with her husband, play with her cousin's kids, help Jennifer set the table for Christmas dinner, I realized something. The moment in the sunroom, the rejection, the hurt, the silence, had been necessary. Not because I wanted it to happen, but because it was the crucible that transformed our relationship from something assumed into something chosen. Madison had to lose me to understand what having me meant. She had to face the consequence of choosing absence over presence to understand the value of showing up. The wedding that fell apart was better than the wedding we'd planned. Not because of the venue or the food or the flowers, but because it was built on truth instead of fantasy, on reality instead of expectation. And the family we'd rebuilt in the aftermath was stronger than the one we'd had before, because now everyone knew what it cost. Now everyone understood what it meant. I'd told Madison I'd bring popcorn that day in the sunroom, told her I'd watch from the audience, and in a way I had. I'd watched her face consequences, I'd watched her learn, I'd watched her grow. But I hadn't been a passive observer, I'd been a father, teaching the lesson that presence matters, that love has boundaries, that showing up consistently is worth more than biology or promises or checks that bounce. In the end, I didn't walk Madison down the aisle because I'd paid for her wedding. I walked her down the aisle because I'd paid attention to her life. And that's what made all the difference. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever been taken for granted by people you love, then if you've ever been replaced by someone's fantasy of what they wish they had instead of appreciation for what they do have, this story is for you. Because here's what I learned through all of this. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let people face consequences. Not to punish them, not to teach them a lesson in the cruel sense, but to show them the truth about what matters, about who shows up, about what love looks like in action rather than words. Madison needed to lose Garrett's fantasy to appreciate my reality. She needed to face the consequence of choosing absence over presence. And I needed to love her enough to let that happen, even though it hurt like hell. The revenge, if you can call it that, wasn't in withholding my money or watching her wedding fall apart. It was in standing firm in my worth, in refusing to accept being demoted to audience member in a life I'd helped build, in teaching her that love has boundaries, that presence matters, that actions have consequences. But the real victory, the real resolution, was in being there when she finally understood, in walking her down the aisle, not because I'd paid for the privilege, but because I'd earned it through 14 years of showing up. That's what a father does. Not because he has to, but because he chooses to, every single day, even on the days when it's hard. Especially on the days when it's hard. So if you're the person who shows up, who's present, who's there day after day while someone else gets the glory, know this. Eventually, people figure out the difference between flash and substance, between promises and presence, between the fantasy of what could be and the reality of what is. And when they do, they'll look for you. Make sure you're still there. Not because you have to be, but because you chose to be. That's what makes you real.